Hello, and welcome to another episode of Perspectives from the Informed Perspective. We're Penny and Jenny, and if this is your first time tuning in, thank you for joining us. This podcast is where we explore what it means to build thoughtful, grounded communities shaped by our local lives, but enriched by voices and ideas from around the world. We believe meaningful change begins with listening, really listening, especially to experiences that challenge or expand our own. Today, we're diving into the sensitive subject of trauma. The word trauma comes from the Greek meaning wound or injury. Psychological trauma refers to the emotional distress that occurs when an experience overwhelms a person's ability to cope or process what's happening. This might be a single event, a series of experiences that feel deeply threatening, harmful, or out of our control. People respond differently to events, and what feels traumatic for one person may not be for another. This is a topic some people may be very familiar with, while for others it may feel more distant or abstract. But trauma, in one form or another, touches far more lives than we often realize. Trauma can happen at any age, and its effects may show up immediately or long after the event has passed. When we use the word trauma today, we're using it broadly. It can include major life events, but it can also include subtler experiences, periods of ongoing stress, loss, instability, or times when safety or belonging felt uncertain. Research cited by the WHO suggests that around 70% of people globally will experience a potentially traumatic event during their lifetime. Before we go any further, we want to acknowledge that conversations about trauma can bring things up, so please take care of yourselves as you listen. You're welcome to pause, step away, or return to this episode later if that feels right for you. Trauma can take many forms, including childhood trauma, collective trauma, generational trauma, moral injury, and even secondary trauma, which affects those who witness, support, or are closely connected to someone else's trauma. The effects of trauma can show up emotionally, physically, cognitively, and behaviorally. People can experience fear, anxiety, sadness, anger, shame, or numbness. It can show up in the body through headaches, fatigue, aches and pains, sleep difficulties, changes in appetite, and also trauma appears, of course, in behaviors. Trauma can affect how we see ourselves, our relationships, our workplaces, or even the world more broadly. As one trauma researcher notes, the ways we're exposed to trauma are vast, and the individual's response to it is personal. Cultural differences, protective factors, and sense of self can all cause very different outcomes for two people witnessing the same event. We also know there are many different forms of care available for addressing the impact of trauma. These include medical and psychological approaches, as well as body-based, creative, and relational practices. The symptoms of trauma and PTSD are real, and support can take many forms. Our intention today is to create space for reflection, curiosity, and listening. As always, we're approaching this conversation with humility, learning alongside you, and grateful for the opportunity to talk about this together. We're looking forward to hearing our guests' perspectives today as they shed light on trauma, resilience, and the ways we can support one another. And now I just want to share a few quotes to help us consider, reflect, and sit with these ideas a little before we talk to our guests. Bessel Eva van der Kolk, The Body Keeps the Score, Brain, Mind, and Body in the Healing of Trauma. Trauma victims cannot recover until they become familiar with and befriend the sensations in their bodies. Being frightened means that you live in a body that is always on guard. Physical self-awareness is the first step in releasing the tyranny of the past. Jessica Stern, in Denial, A Memoir of Terror, that's what trauma does. It interrupts the plot. You can't process it because it doesn't fit with what came before or what comes afterwards. Peter A. Levine, in Waking the Tiger, trauma is not caused by the event itself, but rather by the organism's inability to process the experience. And I love this one from Arthur Golden in Memoirs of a Geisha. After all, when a stone is dropped into a pond, the water continues quivering even after the stone has sunk to the bottom. And finally, Judith Herman's seminal book, Trauma and Recovery. Recovery can take place only within the context of relationships. It cannot occur in isolation. Survivors of trauma must be helped to restore connections with others and to regain a sense of personal safety. So now, Jenny, I would love you to introduce our guests for today.
Thank you, Penny. And to echo what you said, our guests today are going to be sharing some deeply personal stories. So we're really grateful for taking the time and the courage to come and speak, and for our listeners to hear your perspectives, because that's what we're all about. So first up, Ian Sneeth is a neurodivergent social entrepreneur, mindfulness practitioner, course leader and public speaker who previously built multi-million pounds businesses and now focuses on purpose-led trauma-aware work. After years of running from trauma and masking strong emotions through success, overwork and alcohol, Ian returned to a near-death experience he had at the age of 10, not as a belief, but through years of meditation and living in a Zen monastery. Ordained in the Zen tradition of Thich Nhat Hanh, his practice helped him understand the true nature of reality and move from fear and survival into non-fear. He now teaches trauma-aware mindfulness, nervous system safety, and shares non-fear programs with organizations including the United Nations. Uchenna is a social justice advocate and community leader whose work is rooted in lived experience. She raised her 2 sons for over a decade in temporary, unsuitable housing, navigating systemic neglect and discrimination while supporting a child diagnosed with autism. In 2022, her family faced further hardship when her eldest son was hit by a car, sustaining life-threatening injuries and spending 52 days in critical care. Through these experiences, Uchenna turns personal challenges into action. Her mission is to transform stories into solutions, creating spaces, workshops, and partnerships that uplifts, support, and empower families too often overlooked. Uchenna's story is one of resilience, hope, and an unwavering commitment to justice. And last but not least, Letitia is a trauma survivor, coach, speaker, and author known as the Survival Mode Disruptor. She helps women break free from survival mode, heal deep trauma, and reclaim purpose, power, and joy. Drawing from her own lived experience of domestic abuse and its aftermath, Letitia translates resilience into actionable strategies through one-to-one coaching, retreats, memberships, a book, and her podcast, The Survival Mode Disruptive. She also shares bold, unapologetic talks about trauma, healing, and thriving, and inspiring others to move from merely surviving to fully living. Very inspirational people, just on the introductions, Penny. So let's get hearing from them.
Great. Okay. So Ian, I would love to talk to you first. So thank you for coming today. We were just talking briefly before, and you've spoken about running from trauma through your life, and you had great success in your life, but often were very much overworked and also drank a lot of alcohol in your time. Before you had language for trauma, what did survival look like for you? And how were those strategies reinforced by families, schools, or workplaces that rewarded performance over care?
Yes, thank you. Thank you everybody for being here. I'm deeply touched already from the conversation before and those introductions. So what did trauma look like? Well, from a very early age, my mum and dad got together in the swinging 60s, where it was free love, and nothing is free, as we know. So I was the product, and my dad was from the wrong side of town, and my maternal grandmother took a dislike, so they split up when I was 6 months old. So I lost contact with my dad when I was 6 months old, and my mum couldn't cope. She entered another relationship which was violent. So I experienced that violence in the house, in the home growing up, and she couldn't cope, so she left me to be brought up by my grandparents. My grandmother had a lot of difficulty, and she was a closet alcoholic as well. So I never knew how to take her, never knew how how she was going to show up. The saving grace was my grandfather, who was one of the most beautiful men I've ever ever encountered, and so that's why I think I've kind of survived. Where my brother went with my mum, and with no kind of explanation. And he didn't fare so well because my mum unfortunately went through many relationships, and my brother was sort of dragged along through that. Where I was had that kind of stability, so I could cope. But I realised that my mind had kind of stepped in to protect me as a young child. So really kind of disconnected from my body, really disconnected from my feelings and my emotions. And this was this was almost kind of perfect in our society growing up, because family kind of reinforced this, the schooling system reinforced this, where it's kind of, you can't take emotions and feelings into school. It's about results. I was also neurodiverse and dyslexic, so I struggled in school and didn't really fit the mold. So continually felt discriminated against, even though from the outside, I was I was male, white, and in some respects, kind of privileged, even though I came from a working class background. But I just struggled. I just felt completely alone, alienated all of the time, and and it's no surprise that through the difficulties I had, not feeling loved and not feeling understood, and unfortunately, when I did ask my grandmother, why did my mum leave me and kind of take my brother with her, she kind of said that, well, it's because your mum didn't love you. And that just, as a child, just really, really made me feel inferior. So I kind of grew up with this kind of inferiority complex, this kind of complex of like, I can't be lovable if my mum doesn't love me. And I've lost contact with my dad. My nana had difficulties. So that's kind of how I grew up with, with that. So, and a boy growing up in the 1970s, there was a lot of masculine kind of toxic imagery, particularly on, coming through the TV, and you kind of had to fight to survive. You had to fight to survive. So, and I was into sport and things like that as well, and that reinforced it, because I used to play football, and even as a young boy playing football, you went down hurt on the pitch, and it's kind of like your coach is saying, get up, don't let them see you're hurt, man up. So I just cut myself off from all of my feelings, and this is, I see this so much in the schooling system. We live in a society of gross national product, and so we're the product. So it's kind of like we need to achieve, we need to consume, and we need to produce. So completely different to somewhere like Bhutan, which is gross national happiness. So it's understandable we have these difficulties in our society. So I grew up with this, and then when I was taking my exams, I won't go into the detail, but because we hold a lot of our suffering and trauma in our lungs, in our chest, in Chinese medicine, I got bronchopneumonia when I was 10 years of age. So I had the near-death experience. My whole family were called into the hospital, and because I wasn't going to make it, and this gave me another insight of kind of, there's more to this, this realm that we understand, this life, this historic dimension. There's something greater than than us. But that didn't make any sense when I came back into the into this body, if you like. And so when I went back to school, all of my friends thought I'd died, because it was announced that I died. So they were quite surprised when I returned back to school 6 months later. And that carried, that kind of carried on. So when I was doing my A levels, I took sociology, psychology, and economics, and loved psychology. But my peer group, my grandparents were pushing me into economics, so I majored in economics. In fact, rather than psychology and sociology. And it's interesting. I've come full circle, and I'm just really interested in how the mind works now. And this is this is what causes us so much trauma. Has caused me a lot of trauma, not understanding myself. And it wasn't until later on in life, having achieved almost everything that I set out to achieve from a materialistic and doing sense, even though I went through a huge amount of difficulties because I repeated the cycle. Me and my girlfriend got pregnant when we were teenagers, went into social housing, and had a real difficulty. So I had to work really hard to get us out of that situation. But I had all of these tendencies which I didn't understand. I had anger, huge amount of anger in me, a huge amount of violence in me as well that I kind of felt under the surface. And so I learned how to be quiet. I learned how to give the silent treatment, if you like, in everything, because the alternative to that was horrendous, because it would be violence. So I was doing, I was just felt these emotions come up in my body, didn't know how to deal with them. So continually just ran into all different modes, whether it was work, whether it was sport, whether it was socializing. I just wanted to be popular as well. The fight, flight, freeze, fawn response. I mean, it's interesting you mentioned Bessel van der Kolk and body keeps the score, because that's my experience of it. And it was only coming through and achieving all of my goals from that perspective. I could have anything and do anything, but I just didn't know how to be. I couldn't be in stillness and silence because it was just so traumatic for me, because stuff kept coming up, until I got sick one time and I couldn't go anywhere. I had to stay in bed for over a week, and then all of this childhood stuff started to come up. So when I realized I wasn't happy through having and doing things, I picked up as many books as I could on what makes people happy, and then realized that it wasn't external things that were ever going to make me happy. I had to look deeply inside, which was really painful for me. So I had to learn. So I learned through meditation and mindfulness, to look deeply, and to look deeply from an ancient wisdom point of view and neuroscience point of view, as you mentioned, through some of those incredibly beautiful books. And so Peter Levine as well, incredible, trauma response. So I stayed, as part of my journey, I stayed in a Buddhist monastery for 2 years. And Peter Levine came to the Buddhist monastery, actually, funny enough, and in a neuroscience retreat. But actually, the neuroscience retreat turned into being a trauma retreat, which was fascinating. So, as we know, the only way we're going to survive is to kind of like change the way we think, go deep into the body, take care of the body, take care of the feelings, and that's difficult. So we need support networks. We need wisdom, from whether it's modern or ancient wisdom, and we need to. For me, I needed to learn to be able to sit, take care of my inner child like a mother or father holding a baby, instead of running or covering up with alcohol. And I went through the 12-step process as well, the 12-step program, which was incredible because it was such a similar path to Zen. And all the ancient traditions, say the same thing, but it doesn't fit with our culture. It just doesn't fit with our gross domestic produce culture. So that's kind of a potted overview of my journey.
That's a really practical question, Ian, and it's in terms of your and in general mindfulness and meditative practice. Is through that practice, be it meditation, let's say, was that the tool and the access point for you to unearth some of those traumatic experiences?
Great question. It was 2 points really. One was the Zen meditation, The other point was some brilliant psychotherapy, brilliant psychotherapy. And I did EMDR treatment, and then was told realised that I had post-traumatic stress disorder complex from childhood, and this kind of helped me compartmentalise those, for example, those violent experiences, put them in, and then deal with that through EMDR, and also internal family systems. It was a great modality. Which fit again beautifully with the ancient wisdom of, we've all got seeds in our consciousness, the same seeds in our consciousness, because we're all human, and it all depends which we water, which will come up into our consciousness and show who we are. So we're only made up of three things really: our ancestry, as it's been mentioned earlier, our ancestry, what we take into our senses, and the environment that we're in. And if we really become conscious of that, then we can protect ourselves a lot more, and then heal the past.
But I think
sorry, Benny, I wanted to ask that question though, because I think in this society and this product-based society, meditation is often sold as this stillness and this skill that you learn to quieten your mind. And I've never succeeded with it because things come to my mind, and that's why I asked the question, because I'm glad you answered. And the answer is, as you said, it's your own self-practice and self-help, and I'm doing air quotes there, where you can give yourself that space, but you also need other support, as you said, with the psychotherapist and other techniques. We aren't able to, and Penny, you referenced an amazing quote, we aren't able to do it all alone. We need others. And I think also where you touched on the consumerism and the commercialist world we live in, we're often sold these things, and you can just have that, if you practice meditation you will, it's not the case, because people will have things that they need support with, and that's not always often provided. Not the answer, but the route to that extra support. And I think this is where conversations and people hearing what other people have had to experience but go through to get to where they are now is so valuable. So thank you.
Yeah, totally. And I was 40 years of age before I ever sat in a sharing circle, and share, heard people sharing their traumas or their difficulties, and my heart was beating out of my chest because I'd suppressed all of this stuff for that long. So you're absolutely right. The wisdom teachings, to find this wisdom, the ability to have support networks and communities where you can actually practice, for example, mindfulness and meditation together, but to sit in circle, so I did that in Plum Village, which was Thich Nhat Hanh, my Zen master teacher, who was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize by Martin Luther King, another incredible peace activist, and they were kind of brothers that helped bring the end to the Vietnam War. So mindfulness and meditation is not doing nothing; it's actually being engaged and active in the world. And Thich Nhat Hanh wrote over 100 books, and is a global spiritual leader. So I was lucky that I found somebody like him, and then that wisdom, and then again through the neuroscience, through the these great authors who you've just mentioned as well, and looking at it from that point of view. But the community, our support network, is absolutely vital, and the other modalities of healing, like neurofeedback therapy, an incredible healing, particularly for children and young people. We can make huge leaps with this. So there are so many ways. But I'll finish with this. But when I was an entrepreneur, I actually saw in other entrepreneurs and other business, people, particularly men, they were generally traumatized little boys, and these are the people that are leading our world. traumatized little boys that are running away from all of this suffering and creating huge violence. And I mean, I've already heard a little bit from our other guests, and I'm just fascinated to hear what they've got to say, because this is the result of not taking care, and it's kind of not a dualistic issue. It's not a kind of masculine, feminine, because we have to come together and heal all this collective trauma together. So thank you so much for those questions as well.
Thank you. So I'm going to turn to you now, Uchenna. Really wanted to talk to you when you reflect on your journey. What parts of your story do you feel are the most important for people to really understand about trauma?
Thank you so much for that question, Penny. And thank you, Ian, for sharing as well. That was really deep and touching. Yeah. So for me, I think it's how you see trauma. How you see trauma and what your perspective of trauma is and what your experience of trauma is. Thank you. Sorry, that's just my So I wanted to ask a question. What would you define, or what does society define weakness as? Because we're all trained or brought up, or I don't know, there's this thing where you're not supposed to show weakness, but I think weakness is just another form of sensitivity, of being able to express yourself in a soft way, rather than being these like hard, militant creatures that the world just wants us to just be march. We need to sit with ourselves and to get to know each other, to know ourselves, rather, to love ourselves in order to love the people around us. Because if we don't know ourselves, if we're not self-aware enough to know, well, every experience is designed, or not created, designed to, it's your path, basically. That's what I mean. So from that path and your journey, what are you learning from it? And then what are you teaching others? So that's where community now comes into play, because we can't be by ourselves. It's a lonely world out there already. And most times we're by ourselves in our minds. And that's where the trauma begins. It's when you feel alone and nobody understands me, nobody gets what I'm going through. And then you go and sit in a circle with people that share maybe similar experiences. And you start to hear these things where you thought, well, actually, who said I was by myself? It was me. I said I was by myself. But in actual fact, we need to just sit together to go through the trauma that we've been through. And sometimes you need to sit by yourself. So there's different forms of working with it, or the shadow work that you need to do. I practice mindfulness. I didn't know what mindfulness was until I had a breakdown. I was just thinking, mindfulness, what's that? Is that you? And then they showed me all these techniques, grounding, lying down on the floor, just sit with yourself, do your body scan, and things that people would just think, oh, that's just silly. But those are the things you laugh at yourself doing, or people might laugh at you doing, are things you actually need to be doing sometimes, And so for me, it was just being able to just be still, to just think about what I've been through, using all the techniques that I had been taught through therapy. I had to wait for a while for therapy because the list was quite long, and that's another issue that is it's a society issue, the long waits. Why does it have to be where a crisis occurs for you to all of a sudden, all these avenues? Because a crisis occurred in my home and there was support coming out of my ears. I didn't know any of this stuff in my community. It wasn't readily available. My GP didn't tell me anything about it. My what's the name? My healthcare giver healthcare worker didn't tell me it. And I only found out about these things when I was at a breaking point. Why do we have to get to the breaking point to find out what support is readily available out there within the communities that we live in? Because we are trained to think we're alone. No, we're not. So for me, It's the resilience. It's that self-realization that, you know what? Sometimes I'll be sitting in a house full of people and I feel so lonely. My kids will be laughing, people will be having and I'm just sitting there like asking myself, like, is this really life? Is this, it's like a cycle, an endless cycle. You wake up in the morning, you do the school run, you make lunch, and that's how I was living at a point. And I was like, what is the actual meaning? Why am I here? So I had to self-actualize. I had to get to know myself. And that's where I found the strength to start speaking up about, because it was mostly, don't tell anyone your problems. No one needs to know your business. And you start to tell your kids, don't go out there and tell anyone our business. But what are you teaching your children now? That you have to bottle things in. No, you're not meant to bottle things in. You're supposed to release. That's what you do. Even when you open a bottle, the carbonated, the pressure comes out, the softness comes in, you know? And yeah, I think when I found that out, I think it was like a flower in bloom. I was like, wow, there's actually a meaning to this life here, because I was also diagnosed with depression and anxiety, put on medication for it, highest dose at one point because I couldn't cope. My son was going missing from school, he was being exploited and groomed, and then he went missing for 3 weeks over the summer. Next thing, we're getting a phone call, he's in a critical condition. I was just picking up little one from school at that time. Police came, carted us off to the hospital, where we found out he'd had a cardiac arrest in A&E when he was brought in from a different hospital. So all these things are going through my mind. But at this point, I've had the therapy, I've practiced the mindfulness, I do the gardening. So I just became still. You know, in all that chaos, I just found a stillness. I think my faith as well. I'm a Christian practicing, and my belief in God, my faith, just that held me together. I needed that. And so a lot of people don't have that to hold on to. They don't have that. You know, you need that one thing that can pull you back from the brink of it. Those days when you just feel like, you know what, it's better off, let me just go. You know, and I've been there, and it's so hard to pull yourself out. But you need people to help you come out of that. You need the support. And for me, that's one of the things I'm big on: community. I'm big on co-production. I'm big on talking about things. I'm big on, even when you go into the schools, like what's appropriate, what it's not about what's appropriate, it's what is going on within your community that you can talk about. Let's find solutions and stop pointing fingers.
And that we need to talk about as well, even if we might not want to, or there's a preference not to, or to do the surface level talk or education about it. And it's so important to, and then it gives it that from a school or a community or a family perspective, if there's that confidence in talking about things, that generalized,
non-judgment, right?
Exactly, that will feed down to the people that are hearing that.
But I do think, like, it comes back also to what Ian said and everything, taking this time for this self-reflection, this self-work, makes me think there must be so many of us who are potentially suppressing some form of trauma, whatever that might be. And I think it does, as we've been talking, a lot of it stems back, unfortunately, to our childhood, like back to, whenever. And because society is expecting us, we're trying to be the best in our job and be the best mother and be the best father and all this other stuff. We laugh at it because we can't find that. We don't make that time. We can't find that. We don't think we're allowed that time. We don't give ourselves permission to do it. And I think that is potentially maybe where the third space does come in, or the community comes in, that if you find it's too much of a big step yourself to be able to start as a starting point, that you then seek that support first of all, and begin these conversations about how you can potentially get in touch with what's going on inside. Would you have any advice, Uchenna, for families who are currently going through trauma from your own experience?
From my own experience, it's always, sometimes it's so hard to speak up because you've bottled it in for so long and you feel ashamed. There's the guilt, there's all these emotions coming at you. Well, For me, my first step is go to the GP. This is how I found out. I thought, okay, go to your GP. Okay, your GP's only got 10 minutes for you nowadays. But before it was you could sit there, but now where we have the social prescribers, that is so helpful now. And I didn't know my GP had a social prescriber. I thought that was someone that gives medication within the GP. So a lot of people don't have the awareness of the support that is out there. So the advice that I would give is the first step, talk to somebody. And I think the safest space you could go to is your GP, because that's the first thing. You can call the Samaritans, you can call all this, but when you're in a crisis, sometimes the phone is the last thing you really want to be on. You don't want to be texting. So you make an appointment, go to your GP, and your GP will signpost you to where you need to go. And that's usually the social prescriber who will now give you all the information that you need. And that's how that trickled down. That trickled down to me.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your story. You speak about your mission that you help people, in particular powerhouse women, break free from survival mode. From your experience, how does trauma manifest in women who appear strong or high achieving? And why is it so important to address it?
When people hear the word trauma, they often picture dysfunction, chaos, instability, someone visually falling apart. But trauma in high achieving women and powerhouse women really looks like that. More often, it looks like exceptional performance, like capability, like someone who always has it together. And because of that, many women are displaying strength and are praised for it. But what we don't often recognize is that women don't become strong by choice, they become strong by necessity. The women that I work with often have learned very early, or often by someone else saying, if I'm confident, if I'm competent, I'm safe. If I'm needed, I won't be abandoned. If I don't slow down, I don't have to feel. These aren't personality traits, these are survival strategies. So when trauma shows up in high achieving women, it tends to follow very specific patterns. First is control is safety. You'll see women who plan everything, manage everyone, stay 10 steps ahead of all things at all times. From the outside, it looks impressive. It looks organized, proactive, dependable, but underneath, control isn't about preference. It's often about protection. When unpredictability once meant pain, where the nervous system learned that staying in control is how you stay safe. So relaxing, trusting, and letting go doesn't feel freeing. It actually feels dangerous. The second is achievement as an identity. Women don't just do well, they are the strong one, the reliable one, the one who gets things done. And when achievement becomes identity, slowing down feels like disappearing. Because if you're not performing, if you're not producing, then who are you? That's when rest feels threatening, not because they don't want it, but because it feels like losing the thing that makes them most valuable. The third is emotional self-containment. Women are often incredibly calm in crisis. They handle emergencies, they handle pressure, they handle other people's emotions with ease. But in close relationships, especially intimate ones, there's distance. Feelings don't flow freely, they get analyzed and managed and minimized, not because women lack depth or care, but at some point, feeling their emotions wasn't safe. So emotions become something to control rather than experience. And the fourth is rest resistance, stillness, feels uncomfortable. Silence feels loud because when the body finally slows down, emotions and memories have space to surface. So busyness becomes a coping mechanism, achievement becomes distraction, and exhaustion becomes normalized. And all of these things are problems. Um, but we in society reward these traits in women. We praise the woman that handles everything. We celebrate the one who never needs help. We call it strength. We call it resilience. We call it grit. But what we're often applauding is trauma doing a real good job at hiding. And over time, high achieving women find that their success becomes just another cage, right? Women don't usually crash suddenly, they erode quietly. They start asking questions like, why am I exhausted by a life I've worked so hard to build? Why can't I enjoy what I've achieved? Why do I feel empty even though everything looks fine? And that's not failure, that's not ingratitude, that's our nervous system saying that we've been in survival mode too long. So when trauma is actually addressed, something important happens. Women, these high achieving women, they don't lose their ambitions, they don't lose their drive, they don't become passive or less capable. They lose the self-punishment attached to success. They move from I have to prove my worth to I get to build a life that supports my worth. And when we get to a point where achievement stops being a way to survive, it becomes a way to express who we actually are. And I see that pattern across careers, cultures, and generations. Um, and I think it's a good conversation to really understand how trauma has shown up for you, especially women who look like they're doing fine on the outside.
I think especially from what you said as well, the achievement, it's once where you can recognize where you're putting value on that achievement, and that's going to be different parts of your life rather than the classic, success in a career or seeming to have it all under, the smooth family home and operation. It's like it's that reassessment of the value and the worth of that. It's really insightful.
Do most of your clients come to you because they're aware of this, or is it something else that's flagging up that is then having to be unpacked, that there's trauma?
A lot of the women, when they first come to me, recognize that something's wrong and they just don't know what it is. They just feel stuck. And it's because of the mask that they put on. A lot of the women that come, they were like, I have the best career, or I have, this going on over here, but what's going on underneath the surface is I'm drowning and I don't know how to manage that. When I work with clients, if I say it takes three things, three phases to exit survival mode. The first is that self-awareness. I often liken it to a lighthouse. That single light in the dark night that rotates and shines a light on the water gives us in a boat at night the opportunity to change course. Self-awareness does the same thing in our lives. We often are unaware of why we are stuck. The second phase is a reprogramming, being able to challenge our narratives, challenge our beliefs, challenge our conditionings. Uche, you spoke about that a bit. I grew up in a Black home around very strong, phenomenal women. I was never allowed to be weak. I remember my granny saying, don't let your weak slip. Don't let anybody see you cry. Don't let anybody know that things aren't going right. So I grew up in the middle of chaos, performing. And then that became my script. So in order for me to heal and move on, I had to learn how to reprogram that conditioning. I had to learn how to challenge the things that seemed to be normal to me in order so that I can see something different. And the third phase in accident survival mode is a reinvention. Often we pick up survival identities in order to survive, right? Like I became a people pleaser. I was an overachiever. I was the fixer. I was all of these things for everyone else. I didn't recognize that those were trauma responses. I thought I was just nice. I didn't recognize that my experience created a dynamic in me that it meant more to me to keep everyone else around me comfortable than actually being in tune with what was going on. So I self-abandoned for years. The reinvention that I do with my clients is getting clarity, first of all, on what your values are and what your goals are, and then being clear on how you are aligning with that. I think a lot of people don't recognize how much control they actually have over their lives. A lot of us just go with the flow without challenging it, without changing it, right? So that reinvention piece is so powerful because it gives you the opportunity to decide who you are and what that is going to look like moving forward. And for a lot of us who have experienced trauma, one of the things that comes up early on in the healing process is this dismissal of the definition of who we are at our core. I remember walking away from my first marriage and not knowing who I was. I couldn't, like, if somebody asked me, oh, define yourself or talk about yourself, all of my definitions of self were tied to my interpersonal relationships. So I was someone's daughter, I was someone's wife, but who was Letitia? I didn't know. And I think the reason why reinvention is so powerful is because it gives us a chance to just define without social expectation, without family expectation, without anything, right? And that is key. Success, and even with success, a lot of times women, men who have dealt with a lot of trauma, they're following somebody else's definition of success. And then wondering why they're miserable as hell, wondering why life doesn't feel fulfilling, they don't feel content. And I think it's very important to get clarity on what it looks like for you. I spent years building a career in commercial insurance and I hated insurance. I hated it. Whenever I described it, I said it was like rubbing sandpaper on my eyeballs. But I had to stay because I was taught from a very young age that you have to get a good education, you have to get a good job. When you get that good job, you have to do everything that you can to climb a ladder. And then I got to 40 and realized the ladder I was climbing was far from heaven. It was sending me straight to hell. And I had to learn what heaven looked like for myself. So, a huge part of what we do to heal beyond the trauma is getting clarity on what we want our lives to look like, period.
And having conversations with our children as well, like let's check in, check in intermittently. How are we doing? Are the things that we're doing making us happy in our lives? Are they fulfilling us? It might seem like a lot to ask a small child, but if you can begin intentionally with having the conversations and potentially practicing mindfulness in some form, giving them that space where they can articulate themselves or express themselves, I think that's also a huge step. It feels like all that repression that you're talking about, that through childhood we just do as we're told and we don't question. that is tipping the scales, isn't it? And saying, let's talk about it.
And oftentimes it's because our imagination is removed from us, right? As children, we have big imaginations, huge imaginations. I remember saying that I was going to be an astronaut, that performed surgery, and being told that that is not possible.
Crushing, absolutely.
So we adults strip children of their ability to be imaginative, and then wonder why we end up as a society basically robots, following a set plan that somebody else laid in front of us.
All sheep, all following, what we've, past ideas as well. Just one comment I want to make, and it's in everything that you said, but the use of the phrase stuck, I think hopefully this will inspire anyone, and it's really given a different perspective to me for this word, because I've done a coaching certification. I've been around a lot of coaches, and this identification of this feeling of stuck. But actually, from hearing you talk, it's like I always thought stuck. I mean, like you've stopped. You're almost stuck in the mud, but it doesn't have to be. You can be going on your life with success, with achievement, and actually still feel stuck because it's internal. It's value based. It's what you need that isn't being achieved or addressed. And I think that's really important, because it's a really powerful word, but I wonder how many people really realize what that means. I'm not stuck. I know what to do. I know how to carry on how to be a success, if we're going to, continue with that train of thought. But for me, it's really opened my mind to that feeling as well. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Our tween question now today is, what advice would you give to someone who's going through a really traumatic time and feels like they always have to hide their pain? Would you like to start?
Yeah, so I think if you're going through something really hard and feel like you have to hide your pain, I want you to first know that nothing is wrong with you. Hiding feelings is something that people do trying to protect themselves, but you don't have to carry everything alone. One small brave step is to find one safe person and tell them just a little bit of how you're feeling. You don't have to explain everything. Even saying I'm not okay today is enough. It also helps to remember that feelings don't stay the same forever. Hard moments can pass, especially when you let someone walk through them with you. And it's really important to remember that being honest with your pain doesn't make you weak. It means that you're taking care of yourself.
Thank you. That's lovely. Ian?
Yeah, thank you. I'm just really inspired by everything that's been said, and there's so much crossover. It's just been amazing. I really want to thank Letitia as well, because it's kind of like the three things that she mentioned there, like self-awareness and challenging, like, for example, your perceptions and this reinvention. These are the three steps in Zen. It's really fascinating at these crossovers all of the time. So really beautiful, and sharing by Uchenna as well. It's just absolutely, it's touched my heart so deeply. So thank you for creating this space, Penny and Jenny. Just echo really. The first thing I'd say is, like, which I wish someone had said to me, it's like, you're already enough. You're already enough. You're already perfect. All of the causes and conditions that have had to come together to create you at this moment is a miracle in itself, and you're already enough. And exactly, if we can get somebody that we can confide in, who got some wisdom, some kind of a wise, elder, or a wise friend, somebody that's not going to judge you, somebody who's, and other people are around, where there's almost like a code of conduct where we really kind of know how to take care of each other. So There's complete non-discrimination, and everything, is in Zen again. The first key point is everything's impermanent. So this emotion is impermanent. It will go. It will change, and we can we can take care of it. But I think most importantly for me, with my own experience, is like, don't run. Try not to run. Try not to cover up with, try and, even the masks that have been put on as a child, kind of just be, recognize that. Try and get into a situation where you can just, and this sounds ridiculously simple, but it's one of the most powerful things we can do as a human being, is come back to our breath. Just, deep, if we've got a real traumatic experience going on, deep belly breathing into our stomach, below our navel. And if we do that for 10 times, it really calms strong emotions. It's like a miracle. So being able to just come back to our breath, it's something we carry all the time. The batteries are not going to run out, and it's there for us all of the time, and it really helps. And as we've mentioned, finding support networks, kind of like safe spaces, sharing circles, like Uchenna said, it is, doctors, they have, social prescriptions and things they can give now to, different modalities, even, mindfulness and things like that. So there's many different ways. As we know, that there's a mental health crisis going on in society because of everything all the difficulties that are going on in our world, and children are like tuning forks for what's going on in the world. So it's understandable that they're feeling, all of this. So it's completely normal. It's totally normal, and to learn to love ourselves, to really learn to love ourselves. And to even physically hold ourselves and just kind of like be our own best friend and say everything's okay, and they're the kind of some of the key things, and trying to get into something that releases tension out of our body, like in The Body Keeps the Score. Yoga is an incredible way to, if we can find an exercise that works for us, Tai Chi, Qigong, some things like this that can really, even running, or something that can help release the stress that obviously we used to be able to do by running from our difficulties, which were saber-toothed tigers in the past. But it's not now. It's somebody giving you a hard time on social media, which touches us so deeply. So that's me. Thank you.
Ian, something you said as well about reaching out to someone, but maybe that wise elder, but actually a note to the parents that are listening as well, it's that actually it's important to equip your children, or remind them, or tell them who they have got in their network. I saw this wonderful post of this coming of age celebration, and this family invited their daughter, everyone in their daughter's lives that cared about them, so like neighbors, aunties, and they went through a sort of ritual, or a practice of probably giving advice. But what a wonderful thing to know that you've got that, and it doesn't have to be an abundance of people, but just knowing that there are people, and it doesn't have to, outside of the family, I think is quite important.
Sorry.
No, I was going to say thank you for sort of saying that. I was
going to say something that's really, really important, actually, which Letitia touched upon. We even as children, we have to challenge our perceptions, because, for example, I just mentioned about going to the doctors. I was actually sexually abused by my doctor. So somewhere where I felt I was going to be safe became a very dangerous situation, because I went one-on-one with him at his home, because under this guise of I was into photography, he was into photography, and it was a really dangerous situation. So we've got to continually challenge our perceptions and make sure that other people around us that that our safe spaces know what we're doing. These wise elders are so important. So yeah, I thought I'd mention that.
Thank you. And Uchenna?
Thank you, everybody, for your wonderful insights and just great advice. And funny enough, I have these mind cards that I read to my son every morning. They have these little tasks that you can do. Leave a note for someone, say something nice, or leave a flower. You know, I think we need to not. I know it says train up a child in the way you want them to go, but some people are training up children to be bad because they're sexual predators out there that are, taking advantage of children, exploiting and grooming and things like that. I think it's very important to love your children enough for them to love themselves. When they see that you love yourself, that you're working on yourself, they can see that, you know what, I need to work on myself as well. And you need to make your children aware that there's nice people and there's some bad people out there. But one thing I can say is that there's always that one person that will be drawn to you, or you will be drawn to, that you can speak to, whether it's in school, whether it's in church, in life. There's always that one person that you feel comfortable speaking with. I think it's just the universe that does that provides that safe space. And I happen to be someone like that. I've got a relative back in Africa that's going through something, and I'm their safe space. And every time I go back there, they're like, oh my God, every time you're here, I just feel alive again. I feel like I can be all I can be. And there's always that one person that you will find that will be like your guide, not your spirit guide, but your guide, or somebody to give you some sage advice, some wisdom, some support, or signpost you to the place where you can get the support that you need. So there's always that one person, and never be afraid to approach and to speak out, and just let it out so you can let it go.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you to our incredible guests today for sharing their stories, their insights, and their wisdom with us. Healing from trauma is rarely a straight path, and it's rarely something we do alone. Trauma leaves its mark on our minds, our bodies, our relationships, and sense of purpose. But alongside it, resilience, courage, and connection can leave their own indelible traces. To our listeners, thank you for showing up, for listening deeply, and for holding space for experiences that might be difficult, unfamiliar, or deeply personal. Remember, healing doesn't mean forgetting, fixing, or rushing. It means noticing, connecting, and taking the next gentle step, however small it may be. If today's conversation resonated with you, we hope you carry one truth forward. You are not alone, and even the smallest acts of care toward yourself or others can make a profound difference. Please subscribe, share this episode, and leave a review so that together we can continue fostering thoughtful, trauma-aware, and compassionate communities. We're Penny and Jenny, and this has been Perspectives from the Informed Perspective. Keep listening deeply, keep honoring your story, and keep nurturing the communities around you. Until the next time, take care of yourself and each other.